Now, it's well established that Nikola Jokic is the best center in the NBA. On this channel, we know that probably more than anyone else because I talk about him every other video, and I've managed to slip him into this video as well. But then you talk about the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth best centers in the NBA, and people will often come up with a list, something like second Embiid pretty much all the time. Then third, people might talk about Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. And then despite being one of the best players in the playoffs, I still think people have Bam Adebayo around that fifth, that fourth mark in terms of centers. They've probably elevated him above Gobert, but some people still think Karl Anthony Towns is a more talented player. And a lot of people don't think Bam deserves to be in that Jokic-Embiid conversation. And as much as I'm a huge fan of Jokic, as much as I think Embiid's incredibly talented, I think they're still above him at the moment. But I think he deserves to be in that conversation. I think those three are the clear elite centers, and I don't think people talk about Adebayo enough in terms of everything he's done over the last year to go from someone who was a bench player just a few years ago behind Hassan Whiteside. Like, I don't think we understand he was playing off the bench behind Hassan Whiteside, and now he's the third best center in the NBA. Like, that's a remarkable turnaround. So heading into next year, how can we not think that he's going to turn into one of the best players in the NBA full stop if he can make that big of a jump in the space of just a year, in the space of just a couple of years? It just shows that there's so much room for potential, and everything about his game just screams potential. And we don't even need to talk about potential because he's already currently probably one of the 15 to 20 best players in the NBA, and he's just getting started, which is pretty scary, honestly. I think when you look at this Miami Heat team, everyone talks about Butler. I've talked about Hero, they'll talk about Duncan Robinson, but Adebayo kind of gets overlooked. I mean, people know he's probably the second best player, but I would argue prior to the finals, Adebayo was clearly the Heat's best player in the playoffs. Then he got injured, he struggled in the finals against the Lakers, but prior to that final series, the Celtics series, which we'll talk about quite in depth because it was just remarkable in that series, and then the other two series as well. A big reason, obviously, Giannis has struggled against the Heat for over a year now is because of Adebayo, just because of his unbelievable ability to guard perimeter players and to guard bigs, because of his size, strength, athleticism, everything. Everything just meshes into him being one of the best defenders in the league. And that's why I think not enough people are appreciating or kind of realizing how good this guy could be if he gets a couple more seasons under his belt, where he's more involved in the offense, he continues to get better defensively, and everything just grows. It's going to be something scary, honestly. Now, before I even get into that, if you could drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, I make content like this very regularly, and subscribing and liking the video really helps. So anyways, let's get into the video. I mean, just before we talk about how good he is, I want to talk about how he's underrated by the general public. I know most people on this channel probably know that he's one of the better 15 to 20 players in the league, but I was on a Twitter thread and I saw a majority of people say Donovan Mitchell was better than Adebayo when there was a question that asked to say who was the better of the two, and everyone was saying Donovan Mitchell. The reality is just small guards that are score-first guards and don't have an incredible ability to play make like a Chris Paul, or aren't absolutely out of this world in terms of shooting like a Steph Curry. Mitchell's going to be good, but he just has a ceiling on him, unlike Adebayo, who has no ceiling on what he can do, particularly with his offense starting to develop. And let's talk about his offense, because during the Celtics series, during a few of those series, he started to incorporate a mid-range jumper, even a turnaround jumper I saw, and I've seen enough from him to suggest there's potential for him to step out and hit a three ball sooner than later. And that could be dangerous, because if you have someone like him stretching out the floor, it just means when they come up against the Lakers and Anthony Davis, he won't be able to be inside and grab those rebounds. That's why he wasn't grabbing those rebounds against the Nuggets, because Jokic and the Nuggets were stretching the floor. So if you have Adebayo be able to do that, I don't think it's absolutely necessary that he does it, because he's still got a mid-range jumper, which at least stretches the floor a bit and provides some kind of opportunity for guys like Butler to get to the rim. But if he could get to a three-point jumper, which I think he can, that would be huge for his offensive game. But the thing is, like, offensively, shooting, scoring isn't even the big part of his game. Like, we can see him get to the rim. He's got a flurry of moves. In that Celtics series, just watch the highlights of him getting to the rim, like Euro stepping, finger roll layups. Like, he does not look like a power forward, a center out there getting to the rim. He looks more like a to guard, the way he drifts in. But then that's not even his best aspect of his offensive game. It's his passing. He'll pass out of a double team. He can drive to the rim and kick out. He can see over defenses, find cutters. He can do all those things. Another thing, he averaged around 5 assists in that series. If you want to look at a series that just sums up how good this guy could be potentially, it's where he averaged 22, 10, and 5 against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and he was clearly the best player out of anyone in that series. That's a series with Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, and he was by far and away better than any of those players, and it was just crazy to see how far he's come over the course of just 1 year. So heading into next year, he's the key to their championship hopes. You want to talk about the development of Tyler Hero, I think he's another big part. Jimmy Butler continuing to be great. But if we can see that kind of development in just 1 year, what else can we see next year? Can we see even more? Can we see him go to a 20 and 12 guy who averages like 4 assists per game and is one of the 3 to 2 best defensive players in the league? Can we see him snatch the defensive player of the year? He's got the potential to do so. There's nothing really holding him back. He's a rare athletic breed. He broke records in the combine. In terms of strength and power, he was breaking records. He was setting records. So there's nothing that's really holding this guy back on the defensive end of the floor. And then his offense continues to grow. I'm telling you, Bam Adebayo is going to be some kind of a player. He already is. But everything he does is just absolutely insane. There's no one really like him in the league currently. I think when you talk about centers, it's easy to talk about Jokic, Embiid, and Kat. They can put up 30 and 10 any night. And then you've got Gobert, who's won Defensive Player of the Year awards, and Adebayo kind of sits in the middle because he's a way better offensive player than Gobert, but at the same time, he's not quite as good offensively as the other guys I mentioned, but then defensively, his versatility, his ability to switch onto smalls and bigs is not only just so good, but at the same time, one thing that's really impressive and important to note is this really holds up in the playoffs. This is why guys like Giannis, who is clearly the best defensive player throughout the regular season, his switchability isn't quite as good as guys like Adebayo and Anthony Davis because of everything that happens in the playoffs and how you're asked to guard players differently. It just makes it a whole lot different. So to have someone like Adebayo, who's really flexible, really versatile defensively, and he has all those aspects similar to Anthony Davis, holds up in the playoffs, and we've already seen that so far. I just think heading into next year, when you've got teams like the Milwaukee Bucks getting better, bringing in Drew Holiday, one of the top 25 to 30 players in the league, that's a huge signing. You've got the guys like the Nets getting better, obviously getting Kyrie and KD back, just a number of teams getting better. The Lakers, if you get back to the finals, all of these teams have got better. The Heat, they re-signed players. They made some important moves. They brought in a nice young draft pick in Precious Achiuwa, who's got Adebayo kind of comparisons already coming to him. But a lot of the Heat's promise and a lot of the reason I think the Heat are still going to be one of the teams to beat is because of that internal development. Tyler Hero, yes. Duncan Robinson, yes. Even Kendrick Nunn, Precious Achiuwa, yes. But Bam is the one because he's already probably a top 15 to 20 player in the league, as I've said. He's got a chance to be a top 10 player in the league as soon as next year. And if he can become that, if he can take over this team, which I think he needs to do, Jimmy Butler knows that he knows that Bam is someone that can really be the best player on this team and one of the best players in the league. That's why he's talked about it. Before anyone was talking about Bam as an all-star, an all-NBA player, just a top 20 player in the league, Butler was saying he's the heart and soul of our team. He's the key to the championship. He's the key to us doing so well. And he was talking about that probably to boost his confidence and probably because of everything he does defensively and just how Bam brings his team together. Jimmy's been around enough players in enough environments. He knows when he sees someone who has the potential to really take over this league. And I think that's what we've got in Bam. His offensive game needs to improve and it continues to improve. But at the very least, if he becomes someone that's just elite at finishing at the rim, similar to a Giannis, if he gets his playmaking to even a different level, similar to a Draymond Green, and if his defense becomes the best in the league, which there's no reason it shouldn't be, then we're looking at someone that's just a special talent. And then his offensive game, everything he's done over the last few years in terms of develop, suggests to me that there's room for him to improve even more. And that's a scary side for opposition teams. I think you're looking at one of the most underrated players in the league. People know he's good, don't get me wrong, but people don't know he's that good. And don't be surprised if he becomes a top 10 player in the NBA as soon as next year. Because everything I saw in the playoffs leads me to believe that is just around the corner. Look, that's pretty much all I've got to say in this video. just talking about how good Bam Adebayo is, because I don't think enough people appreciate what he did in the playoffs and what he can potentially do given his offensive game, his defensive game. He's got the most well-rounded game out of all of those centers that I mentioned, and I think he just needs to elevate to a different level in terms of defensively and offensively to potentially put himself as the best in the league. I'm a huge Jokic fan, but we look at what Bam can do. It's just unmatched in terms of his potential, given his athleticism, given his skill level. I'm still going to have Jokic as the number one guy until he proves otherwise, but Bam has that potential to be up there because of everything he does. And I don't think enough people are realizing that this was his first year playing as a genuine starter, and he put up those kind of numbers and that kind of return. Give him one more year, give him 2 more years as a starter, and the league is going to be completely aware of everything he can do. And that's going to be scary, and that's the reason the Heat are going to be even better than last year. Not because they brought in some big name in free agency, not because Jimmy Butler, but because of Bam Adebayo and his development. If you did enjoy the video, if you do think he's one of the most underrated players in the league, if you do think he's a top 3 center, let me know below, drop a like on the video. Other than that, I'll catch you next time. Bye.